Hi and welcome to my gardening journey. I'm John and it's the middle of July. July has been a typically British month when it comes to weather. We've had hot days, cold days and a ton of rain. It's quite humid at the moment and it's not overly pleasant to be outside and working. This year's weather has been pretty strange all round. We've seen February with temperatures that were reaching up to what we would expect to see in summer, and there's been a few nights this month where I would expect it to be autumn, and even considering sticking the heating on. Not something you'd expect during July. This year I've had a reasonable crop of onions and garlic. Now these onions and garlic are the ones that I planted October time last year, and they've been grown from sets. They haven't grown to the sizes that I really wanted them to, and that's partly down to the fact that I really haven't done anything around feeding them. Onions and garlic would do well with a little bit of general fertiliser, and I haven't put anything in. I've really just relied on what was in the soil for them to grow with. But despite that, still pretty happy with the crop I got. One of the problems I have had with them though is that they have been bolting. The weather that I was talking about earlier on has really been a bit of a problem for them. So they've gone from hot days, cold days, wet days, dry days, and a number of the onions in particular have bolted. And bolting, if you catch early enough, may not be too much of an issue. So all I'm doing is I will go around and just break off the seed heads as they're growing. But the problem you do get with them is that you tend to get a heart within the centre of the onion, which isn't really nice and not particularly edible. So the ones that have bolted, I'm going to keep to one side and I'm going to use in stews and other things like that, and I'll probably use them quite quickly, and I'll be looking to store the ones which haven't bolted and are looking pretty good. Now I'd absolutely love to be able to plait them together and have a lovely onion plait that I can hang up, but I'm not that good with them, and to be honest I think they'll fall apart if I did that. So I'll just be storing them in containers where there's good airflow, and hopefully that should be enough to see me through into early next year. I've also been growing some tomato plants and they're doing really well. Now the tomato plants are not producing any fruit yet, but they're definitely starting to get there. The flowers are coming through and that's a really good indication that I need to start feeding them. So all I'm doing is putting some bog standard common tomato feed into the watering can, and then I'll use that when I water the plants themselves. They really need some food and some nutrients in order to produce really good crop. It's also worth thinking about how you're going to water them as they grow. The issue when you have periods of drought and also then lots and lots of fluid is that you will end up having split tomatoes. So consistent watering is really important if you want to get the maximum out of your crop. I'm also pinching out at the moment, and that's where I take the shoots which are coming up between the leaves and the main stem. What I'm looking for is one tall vine which the fruit will grow off. Otherwise I'll end up with a massive tomato bush, and that's not what I'm after. It allows all of the energy to be put into growing that fruit, and once it reaches a certain height I'll just nip off the top of the growing shoot. That means that it can really drive all of its energy into growing the fruit. So hopefully that's a good couple of tips for anyone who's currently growing some tomatoes. I'm really pleased with how the peas are coming on. They've turned into really big plants and the pods are starting to grow on them. I haven't yet got any that are good enough to harvest and none that I can eat yet, but I am really looking forward to them when I can. Now these and plants like them really benefit from being harvested regularly, because once the seeds start to harden and the seed pods harden, that's indicating to the plant to stop producing more. They've effectively gone to seed. So if you keep harvesting them, it will keep producing until such a time as the weather changes. So even if you're not going to eat them, it's definitely worth getting out there and getting rid of some of those hard and older pods. The same applies for runner beans. Now the runner beans that I've got have started to flower, but definitely not started to turn into their produce yet. But they also really benefit from being picked on a regular basis. So once they start to go hard and go to seed, the whole plant will start to shut down. So do keep picking them even if you're not going to eat them, because that will continue to produce more. And you can actually freeze a lot of these things. You need to blanch them first and then try and freeze them quickly, but they can be frozen for use later on. So even if you pick them and you don't have a meal ready for them, you can make use of them later on. Now I haven't harvested my potatoes yet. I have a crop of second earlies which have finished and they have died back, but I haven't lifted the potatoes yet. I just haven't got around to doing that at the moment, but I may try and do that this weekend. My main crop is doing really well, and I'm really pleased with the fact that these plants are doing so well and they haven't got blight this year. Most years I do suffer with blight here, but I think I've got enough airflow going around for them to do quite well. If you've seen some of my earlier videos, I am doing a test between the seed potatoes that I've put in my ground, and I've put some into some grow bags. And those grow bags and the ones in the ground are doing pretty well at the moment, but I haven't yet seen how many potatoes they produce. Hopefully I'll be harvesting them in the next few months. My courgettes are doing pretty well too, and they are producing some fruit. Unfortunately, they're being nibbled by something, and I haven't figured out what yet. So I'm probably going to have to move them to protect them, to see if I can stop whatever it is attacking them. But they will produce a huge volume of produce, so whatever is attacking them at the moment I suspect won't be able to keep up with the amount of courgettes that will soon be coming off these plants. I do have a crop of carrots coming through, and at the moment they're nowhere near big enough to be eating. I'm doing them again slightly different this year, so I normally put carrots into the main bed, but I'm doing them in compost in a container to see whether or not I can get some better quality carrots out of there. I have a second one which I'll soon be seeding with some autumn carrots as well. So that's really it at the moment. There isn't a huge amount more that I can tell you, and I'm so far behind, it's unbelievable. I had a load of intentions to sow some more seeds, but I've really missed the boat on that one. I'm now going to be looking at what I might be doing for winter crops and early spring crops next year. So if you do like to follow along and you like this sort of content, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time.